Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit. It's time for another weekend book review. And today we're going deep on a book that's made some serious waves in the literary world, The Vegetarian by Kang. This one's picked up both the 2016 Man Booker International Prize and the 2024 Nobel Prize in Literature. So before we get into all that, let's just dive right into the book itself.
It really is remarkable how such a simple premise, like a woman deciding to become vegetarian, turns into this deep exploration of, the human psyche and societal pressures and our relationship with nature.
Yeah, you're definitely right. It's not your lighthearted story about tofu and tempeh or anything. So the book's divided into 3 parts, each told from a different perspective, which really adds the unique feel of this story. The first part is simply called The Vegetarian.
Right.
And it throws us right into this unsettling change in the main character, Yeong-hye's life. And we see this all through her husband's eyes.
Yeah, the husband's really interesting because he represents this rigid sense of normalcy, and he is totally thrown off by his wife's vegetarianism. And not because he's worried about her, but because it disrupts his routine and his expectations.
Yeah, it's like her choice just exposes this big crack in his perfect little reality.
Right.
And he's more worried about how it affects him.
Yeah.
Than, actually trying to understand her.
Exactly. And there's this one part where he talks about her body odor. He says it smells like meat, which is so bizarre, but it shows how disconnected he is from her inner world.
It's like he's viewing her through this lens of his own discomfort.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really disturbing when he tries to force feed her meat. It says a lot about those expectations placed on women in that society.
It really highlights the patriarchal structures in Korean society, for sure.
Yeah, where women are expected to just conform to their husband's wishes.
Yeah, and that societal pressure is a huge theme. Yeong-hye's vegetarianism becomes this act of defiance.
Like she's reclaiming control over her own body. It's like her body becomes this battleground. She's rejecting the violence she sees in the world.
Yeah, the violence of eating meat, but also the violence of those expectations.
That's a powerful statement.
It is powerful, but it's definitely not an easy one to just accept.
No, it's not.
What really stood out to you in this first part? What were your initial impressions of Yeong-hye and her husband?
I was drawn to the dream imagery right away. It's unsettling, and it seems to be fueling her decision to become vegetarian. It makes you wonder, is this a mental breakdown or some radical self-preservation?
It's that ambiguity that makes it so compelling. We're always trying to figure out her motivations, but the novel never gives us those easy answers.
Exactly. It keeps you guessing the whole time. And then we get to the second part, Mongolian Mark. Now we shift to Yeong-hye's brother-in-law, an artist who becomes fixated on her.
This section is all about desire and art and exploitation. The brother-in-law sees Yeong-hye as this muse, but his fascination is bordering on obsession.
He's drawn to her otherness.
Right, like she's connected to something primal and untamed.
He starts painting flowers on her body. It's like he's trying to possess and control her, which is the opposite of what Yeong-hye wants.
Yeah, she wants to shed her skin, become something more than human.
It's interesting how these different perspectives show us different parts of her character.
We just get these glimpses, never a full picture.
She's like slipping away, becoming more mysterious.
Exactly. And that takes us to the third and final section, Flaming Trees. This time it's told from her sister's perspective, In-hye, and she's the closest to understanding Yeong-hye. But even she struggles to really grasp her transformation.
There's this heartbreaking helplessness in her narration. She's watching her sister fall apart and wants to help, but can't.
It shows how limited empathy can be. Even those closest to us can be unknowable.
And then amidst all of this, we learn more about Kang herself.
Oh yeah, Kang is a really celebrated South Korean author. Her books often deal with trauma and memory and the body. Her writing is known for its poetic intensity and its exploration of the darker side of human nature.
And The Vegetarian is her most well-known work internationally. It's no wonder it's won both the Man Booker International Prize and the Nobel Prize in Literature.
It really shows the power of her writing, to be recognized like that on a global stage.
And the themes she explores are so universal. The body is rebellion, the unknowability of others, and the complex relationship between humans and nature.
Those resonate with people across cultures and languages.
And she packs so much depth and complexity into such a short novel.
Every sentence feels carefully crafted. It's like brushstrokes creating this vivid and often unsettling portrait.
Yes, and the prose is sparse and poetic, which makes the disturbing imagery even more powerful. Speaking of unsettling imagery, there's this one scene I can't get out of my head. Yeong-hye is in the hospital, and she unbuttons her gown and bares her breasts to the sunlight. What do you make of that?
It's such a raw moment, almost like she's trying to absorb energy from the sun to nourish herself in a way that food can't anymore.
It also feels like a total rejection of societal norms, this deliberate exposure that shocks everyone around her. It's like she's shedding her human skin, trying to go beyond her physical form.
It goes back to that motif of plants and flowers throughout the novel. Yeong-hye sees herself becoming something closer to nature, rooted and growing, not consuming and destroying.
And that motif of blood is just as powerful. It's in her dreams, her self-harm, even her rejection of meat.
Blood becomes the symbol of the violence she's running from, both the violence against animals and the violence she feels inside.
It's like she's trying to cleanse herself of that violence.
To reach some kind of purity.
It's haunting. Makes you question what sanity and normalcy even mean. Is this madness or a spiritual awakening?
That's what makes Han Kang's writing so brilliant. She doesn't give us easy answers. She makes us confront our own ideas about what it means to be human.
To exist in a world that clashes with our desires.
Exactly.
And we can't forget the translation by Deborah Smith. She captures the poetic beauty of the writing, but also conveys the unsettling undercurrents of the story.
The language is sparse, almost dreamlike. It adds to the feeling of unease and disorientation.
It's like we're in Yeong-hye's mind, seeing the world through her eyes.
Exactly.
So what's the most significant takeaway from The Vegetarian for you? What do you hope listeners will remember from our deep dive?
That's tough. There's so much to unpack. But I'd say it's recognizing the limits of our own understanding. We can never fully know another person, even the people we love the most.
It reminds us to be curious and compassionate, not judgmental.
And to be open to the possibility that what we see as normal might just be our own limited perspective.
I love that. And the novel also raises questions about societal expectations, especially for women.
Oh, definitely. Yeong-hye's rebellion against meat can be seen as a rebellion against the patriarchy.
Where women are expected to be submissive.
Right.
Her refusal to conform is both empowering and unsettling.
It makes us question the roles we're expected to play and what happens when we challenge those norms.
Her vegetarianism starts as a personal choice, but becomes a symbol of resistance.
It shows how the personal is political. Our choices can have wider implications.
It's a powerful message that goes beyond Korean society.
It speaks to that universal desire for autonomy and self-expression, especially for those who feel marginalized.
Absolutely. And we can't forget the exploration of humanity's relationship with nature. Yeong-hye seems to be searching for unity with the natural world. Like she wants to go back to a primal state.
There are those powerful scenes where she's drawn to plants and flowers, like she's trying to become part of their world.
And yet the novel shows the violence we inflict on nature, how we exploit it for our own gain.
It's a complicated relationship. We're a part of nature, but we often act against it.
The Vegetarian forces us to face that contradiction, to examine our own impact.
It's a timely message, especially with climate change and environmental issues.
It reminds us that our choices have consequences.
For the planet we live on.
Right, our choices matter.
I think it's safe to say this isn't a light read. It challenges us intellectually, emotionally, even ethically. But it's so rewarding. It stays with you. Makes you reflect on your own beliefs.
It definitely makes you think about your relationship with food, with your body, with the world.
It's amazing how Han Kang does this through such a simple story, but so unsettling at the same time.
And I keep thinking about the theme of transformation.
Right.
It's not just Yeong-hye who's changing. It's everyone around her, too.
That's a great point. Like, her husband starts having these disturbing dreams about meat. It's like he's being infected by her vegetarianism.
And her brother-in-law becomes more and more obsessed.
Projecting his desires onto her changing body.
Right. It's like her transformation is a trigger for their own psychological unraveling.
They're forced to confront things they've been repressing.
And then there's In-hye, her sister, trying so hard to understand and care for Yeong-hye while dealing with her own struggles.
She represents that desire for empathy, that need to connect with someone who's slipping away.
It makes you wonder if true understanding is even possible. Can we ever truly bridge that gap between ourselves and others, especially when they challenge our reality?
That question of unknowability is so central to this book. We try to make sense of Yeong-hye, but she resists our attempts to define her.
She becomes this symbol of the mystery of human experience.
And it's up to us, the readers, to grapple with that ambiguity.
To figure out our own interpretation.
Exactly.
It's a book that stays with you, that's for sure.
It really is. It's powerful literature. It doesn't give easy answers. It provokes questions and sparks debate.
And it makes you think long after you finish it.
It really does.
And if our listeners want to experience this for themselves, definitely check out The Vegetarian by Han Kang. It's a short but impactful novel. It'll stay with you.
It really will, and you might find new things each time you read it.
Exactly.
It's worth multiple reads.
And be sure to check out her other works, too. She's such a gifted writer.
She is. The Vegetarian is just one example of her talent.
Well, that wraps up our weekend book review deep dive into The Vegetarian. Here on Revise and Resubmit, we hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on Spotify, Amazon Prime Music, and Apple Podcasts, so you don't miss any future episodes. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into literature. Until then, happy reading.